Hey everyone, Jared back again. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? Aside from the terrible marketing with the whole invite system, the OnePlus One is an awesome phone. And for the price, the hardware specs in this phone puts other flagship phones to shame. I mean, it doesn't have any waterproofing, a 2K display, or even an IR blaster, which I dearly miss on my other phones. But what you're paying for is a phone with no bells and whistles, and the price definitely reflects that. So as I'm sure many of you know by now, the OnePlus One comes in both the Silk White 16GB version and a Sandstone Black version, which packs 64GB of internal storage. It runs CyanogenMod 11S, which is a version of CyanogenMod designed specifically for the OnePlus One. Having both the Silk White and Sandstone Black version, I can tell you that I really like the look and feel of both variants. The Silk White version is extremely smooth feeling, but not slippery, which is apparently a hard feat for most other OEMs to achieve. The Sandstone Black version isn't really black, it's more of a gray charcoal color, but it feels absolutely amazing to hold. When I first touched the Sandstone version, I thought that, yes, it does feel like sandstone. But that was sort of short-lived. After about an hour of molesting it, it started to feel more like an interesting durable plastic, if anything. So we've got a 5.5-inch 1080p display with a PPI of 401, dual mono speakers at the bottom, or at least that's what they sound like. Power button on the right and volume rockers on the left. A 5-megapixel front-facing camera with a 13-megapixel on the rear. The headphones port is on the top, which some people prefer, but I've always been a fan of it actually being on the bottom. And I guess it really all depends on how you put your phone in your pocket, I guess, but the capacitive back, home, and menu buttons are pretty dim, but you can switch to on-screen buttons if you feel the need. Oh, and by the way, we can actually remove the whole backing. It's not easy, but we can. Some of you guys may be aware that OnePlus has sort of shown us all that they're going to be releasing a bamboo back cover soon, hopefully. Eventually, OnePlus is going to release replacement backs with different colors and styles, but if the speed of the OnePlus One's release is any indication, we'll probably be waiting a while for that too, and by that time you might be looking for a new phone. So I'm in love with the software side of things. CyanogenMod 11S is awesome, but there are some bugs that I've been experiencing, of which I've been posting on social media, and I'm not the only one who's noticed them. Now, I don't want to dwell on them too much because OnePlus and the CyanogenMod team are very aware of these issues. In fact, they even released a statement saying they're aware of them. And they're currently working on an update to address those bugs. That said, currently the screen off touch sensitivity is way too high, resulting in the flashlight, camera, and music player apps randomly launching in the pocket, which is extremely annoying. So I love the custom lock screen. It's simplistic while still showing you all the relevant info you need at a glance, but if you don't like it, you can always switch it back to the more traditional ring style with quick shortcuts. Now, moving further into the software, if you're at all familiar with CyanogenMod, then you'll feel right at home with CM11S. It still retains all the customization options that we've seen in other CM11 releases for other devices, but with some extra goodies just for the OnePlus One, such as the screen off gesture shortcuts that I spoke of earlier. For now, I actually have them all disabled because those bugs were getting to be a little too much for me, which is really disappointing right now because those features are actually incredibly useful. But you simply won't find this level of customization in any other Android phone on the market right now, and that actually brings me to my opinion of how the settings are all laid out. So CyanogenMod has come a very long way since I first flashed CM7 on my HTC Hero way back when, but they still haven't seemed to figure out how to organize settings options yet. A good example of the disorganization I'm talking about can be found under both the interface with the gesture shortcuts and display with the double tap to wake option. Now, these are all technically screen off gestures, which makes me feel like they should all be under the same banner of like either display settings or the gestures shortcuts options. Even double tap to sleep, which is located under the status bar settings options, should be grouped with the others. There's just too much of an organizational inconsistency throughout the settings menu, which prevents it actually from being a smooth customization experience, at least for me anyways. And the stock OnePlus One Hexo theme is, in my opinion, kind of boring and ugly. Now, it's not even close to being as bad as other OEM skins like ColorOS, which I absolutely despise, or TouchWiz, which pretty much everybody collectively doesn't like. It definitely gave me a need to theme it, but luckily the CyanogenMod theme engine engine is integrated, and there are tons and tons of both premium paid and free themes to choose from. Now, after installing a theme, I was able to move past my initial thoughts on the looks and really start to enjoy this phone. But hey, some of you might disagree with me on that one and really like the stock theme, and you won't hear any arguments from me on that one. It's totally a matter of preference, but in case you guys were wondering which theme I like the most, I chose Flux. It's a system-wide flat-looking theme, but adds some depth to the various icons and such with some slight shadows. It is a paid theme, but I think it's totally worth it. Either way, I've really enjoyed the feel of CM11S. It's fun to navigate around and has tons of customizable options. So performance of the OnePlus One is good, not great. I haven't gotten the LG G3 in my hands yet, but I still think that the HTC One M8 has the best performance to date. At least in my experiences, based on all of the other major devices in 2014 that I've reviewed so far. And so like all other major phones right now, it packs a Snapdragon 801 with the OnePlus One being clocked at 2.5 GHz and has 3 GB of RAM and an Adreno 330 GPU. Now, navigating around the settings menus with a quickness, as most power users do, I didn't notice any stuttering whatsoever, but I did notice that there can be slight delays when launching some apps. Take the YouTube app, for example. If it's not already running in the background, it takes like a solid second or two to launch. And while some folks might think that's being nitpicky, when you get an HTC One M8 in your hands with the same CPU but less RAM and launch apps that aren't already running, and it launches those apps right away with no delay, it makes you question the performance of not just the OnePlus One, but many other devices too. But other than the odd slight delay while launching apps, it's a fast, well-performing phone, and if you unlock the developer options, you also unlock the performance options. And in there, you can set the performance profile from the default balanced profile to the performance profile, if you don't mind sacrificing a little bit of battery life for some more speed. And in case you were interested, when it comes to benchmarks on Geekbench, it scored a single core score of 989 and a multi-core score of 3038. And with Antutu, it scored 38,508, which ironically puts it above the HTC One M8 and Samsung Galaxy S5. So the display is an interesting topic for me. It's a nice big 5.5-inch 1080p IPS display with a PPI of 401. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it's a nice display. It's big, it's bright, but since using devices with smaller displays and higher pixel density, not to mention the Oppo Find 7 with a 5.5-inch QHD display with a PPI of 534, the OnePlus One just doesn't produce as sharp lines as many of the others do. Now, the colors it produces, though, are actually pretty punchy for an LCD panel. At first, I thought the colors were a bit washed out, but I think that was due to the stock theme I was running prior to loading the Flux theme that I am now. Now, I think the colors are pretty damn fantastic. So the built-in dual mono speakers really aren't impressive. I mean, they do get loud, but there's no substance to them. Out of all the flagship phones of 2014 that I've reviewed so far, the OnePlus One probably has the worst speakers out of all of them. I know I'm probably exaggerating just a little bit here, but bear with me. Now, some of you might disagree with me there, and you're more than welcome to sound off in the comments below, but that's just how I feel. However, plug in some headphones and it sounds great, especially with the Audio Effects app, which looks pretty sweet visually and has a bunch of pretty awesome presets and obviously a custom preset option to create the right sound for you. So the camera is something I have a bit of an issue with. I mean, it's better than the Nexus 5's camera, but not by much. For a 13 megapixel camera, I was expecting some sharper looking pictures than what I got. Part of the problem is not having a tripod or a stable surface to rest your hand on while snapping a shot. Most of the time, even the slightest movement results in a slightly blurry, out of focus looking picture, causing you to take more than one picture until you get it right, which drives me friggin' nuts. But that's not really the company's fault in my opinion. I've actually found this to be the case in every single phone camera I've ever tested without optical image stabilization, which is actually why I can't wait to get my hands on the LG G3. Now, once you manage to snap a stable and focused picture, after reviewing the picture on your computer, you'll notice right away that it can severely underexpose and undersaturate as well as overexpose and oversaturate colors. Some of the pictures that I'll be showing right about now were shot at a local park while it was really sunny. You can see that the shot of the soccer field, or football field for my friends across the pond, that there's a blue sky with only one tiny cloud, but the field itself is really dark. This was taken at about 2 in the afternoon, so the picture should look very bright and sunny. What's interesting though is that it actually performs quite well in low-lit situations with much less noise than most other phone cameras out there. I'd say the low-light performance on this phone is as close to the HTC One as I've seen on any other device so far. Which is a big claim to make, I know, but when I say the closest, I mean it's the closest in my opinion and experiences, but at the same time, still quite a ways off from what the HTC One M8 can do in low lighting, but that's just been my experience. Your mileage may vary. The camera app has got tons of options, everything you could need and everything I've ever complained about other camera apps not having. From ISO and exposure to the slow shutter speeds and focusing modes right down to anti-banding. It's got it all. So with all those issues with the camera that I have, they could easily be corrected by manipulating some of the manual controls, but with all these awesome manual controls comes just as much confusion and frustration as with the settings organization that I mentioned earlier. So first off, the modes selection is this super long list that you can access by swiping down in the viewfinder. But what you're seeing here is just the modes that I've selected to show. Click on the unlabeled circle icon and then on the goofy looking magic wand, and pow! Welcome to the craziness that is the mode selection screen. And next is the fact that in video settings, it actually allows you to set the resolution to 4K and the slow motion to 120 FPS, for example. But when you go to hit record, you get a little message telling you that you can't record with HFR in that resolution. Now, I'm not stupid. Asking a phone to record in 4K 120 frames per second is a tall order, at least for now. But my point is, why not, like other camera apps, gray out or disable the ability to select 120 FPS when the 4K resolution is selected, or vice versa. And speaking of 4K, I did record some sample footage, and while it still produced a sharp, high-resolution video image, I still felt that it was underexposed and undersaturated. So that actually brings me to battery life. It's amazing! I've reviewed very few phones that can hold a charge with moderate usage as long as the OnePlus One can. So for instance, on a typical day, I have 2 Gmail accounts pulling in emails, Twitter, Google+, about 30 minutes of YouTube, plenty of text messages, a few 50-minute phone calls, maybe a solid hour of gaming, several pictures taken, and Wi-Fi or data always connected, and Bluetooth on at all times for my LG G Watch and various other things. And streaming music for about 4 hours a day at least. And I'm usually left with about 20% or more by the end of the day with about 4 to 5 hours of screen on time. And to give you an example of the rate of discharge, I played Shadowgun Dead Zone for a solid hour, which, by the way, if you didn't know, it's an online multiplayer first-person shooter, so it's not just draining battery via CPU and GPU, it also uses your Wi-Fi or data radios as well. So anyways, I started at 100%, and after an hour of straight gaming, it only consumed about 15%, which is pretty darn good. Now, I know plenty of people have been able to get 6 to 7 hours of screen on time, but I like to use my phone for more than just super light tasks like browsing the web and reading, for example. In other words, I like taking full advantage of those 4 cores and 3 gigs of RAM. Okay guys, conclusion time. The OnePlus One, the unicorn of the smartphone world, if you will, I've nitpicked at it while at the same time praising it. The bottom line is it's a good phone with a great price, which actually in turn makes it a great phone. Now, some might disagree with what I'm about to say, but everything about this phone is just good. Not great. I mean, it's got great specs on paper, but in actual use, I wasn't blown away by it. I mean, the performance is good, not great. The display is good, not great. And the camera is good, but again, not great. But if you keep repeating the price to yourself, as I do, you can't help but think, man, this is a really nice phone. It has awesome build quality, feels great to hold, and when you consider what you get for the money when comparing to other flagship phones in its class, you'd almost be a fool not to buy this phone. That said, because of how the company turned the OnePlus One into a unicorn or Bigfoot, rarely seen and hard to catch, I have a hard time recommending this phone and helping promote OnePlus, further fueling their justification of the invite system. But if you can get your hands on one before it becomes obsolete, I'd say jump on it as if your life depended on it. Worst case scenario, you don't like it, and based on supply and demand at the moment, you could sell it for more than what you paid. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. If you'd like to buy a OnePlus One right now instead of waiting for an invite, I'll put a link in the description below to where you can buy one and have it actually delivered to you in a matter of days. And if you like this video, show me some love and tap that likes button down below. And if you haven't already, maybe subscribe. That way you can stay up to date on all of my future videos. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers. This video is sponsored by UnlockThatPhone.com. Unlock any phone, any carrier, worldwide. Visit UnlockThatPhone.com for more information.